Senator from New York.
I rise in support of the Hagerty-Gillibrand substitute amendment to the Genius Act, legislation to regulate the cryptocurrency assets known as stablecoins. Over the past several years, top U.S. financial regulators, both Democrats and Republican administrations, have repeatedly called on Congress to do their job. Regulate this new industry. Do your work. Do the oversight. Do the accountability. Write legislation and pass a law. They've repeatedly called on Congress to regulate stablecoins, recognizing their global role in the global economy. Both administrations have recognized that for the United States to remain the financial capital of the world, Congress needs to pass clear regulatory rules that protect consumers and foster innovation here at home. I started working on this legislation 3 years ago with Cynthia Lummis. This is not a bill written quickly for any reason, but to regulate an industry that needs rules of the road. To date, Congress's failure to act has left the digital asset space as a Wild West where American consumers are vulnerable to scams and businesses are desperate for the regulatory clarity they need to compete with foreign countries, foreign entities that do business in our markets effectively. Doing nothing and protecting the status quo is not only irresponsible, it's unacceptable. Unlike the U.S., our global competitors have moved to regulate this space. In 2023, the European Union passed comprehensive cryptocurrency regulation, and numerous meaningful provisions went into effect last year. China's central bank has been promoting the digital yuan, which threatens the U.S. dollar's role as the global reserve currency. Global commerce will soon be conducted using stablecoins. It is imperative to keep the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency of the world, and for stablecoins to be pegged to the dollar, not the Chinese yuan. There's reason for both consumers and small retailers to be supportive of this legislation. Stablecoins offer faster, more affordable ways to settle transactions that will benefit everyone. Earlier this year, Senators Hagerty, Alsobrook, Scott, Lummis, and I introduced the Bipartisan Genius Act, which is the strongest effort to date to regulate and create a clear regulatory framework for the payment stablecoin industry. It has a number of common sense provisions relating to consumer protections, reserve requirements, illicit finance, national security, foreign issuers, separating of banking and commerce rules, just to name a few. It had an excellent markup in the Senate Banking Committee, where senators had many of their concerns addressed. Bipartisan amendments were accepted. The result was a true bipartisan product that passed with strong bipartisan support, including votes from 5 Democrats. Over time and through subsequent negotiations, this bill has only become stronger, with several additional improvements to strengthen consumer protection, clarify disclosure rules for members of Congress, and implement other changes that close loopholes, prevent money laundering, and establish stricter and more specific standards. The latest version of this bill earned support from a bipartisan majority of both Republican and Democratic members of the Senate Banking Committee. The strong bipartisan nature of this effort has been demonstrated by the fact that the bill has continued to pick up new support with each additional vote. I'm very grateful to Senator Hagerty's here. Together, we had a very strong bipartisan working relationship. If you could see a document itemizing every change that's been made since the minute we introduced this bill, it is volumes long. It's extraordinary how open this process was, how many senators were able to give serious critical thinking to the bill, to make it better, to bring bipartisan support behind this effort. And I can't thank Senator Hagerty enough for his leadership, his patience, and his willingness to create a bipartisan regulatory framework for an industry that desperately needs it. I've been in the Senate now since 2009. I've never seen a more generous bipartisan process than I saw in this legislation. I've never seen a more serious group of senators get together to try to write legislation of first impression than I saw in this process. And I know the people who are adverse to this bill have their own political view. I think it's extremely unhelpful that we have a president who's involved in this industry. And I would love to ban his activity. But that does not diminish the excellent work in this legislation. It does not diminish the hard work that bipartisan group of senators put into this to make a difference and to write a law that can protect consumers, that can protect our financial services industry, that can protect the strength of the dollar, and that can protect people who would like access to capital. 30% of Americans are unbanked or underbanked. Many of those Americans have found access to the capital markets, access to capital through cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. This stablecoin bill represents the first incident that we are trying to make access to capital a reality for more Americans, to have our safety and soundness rules, our know your customer rules, our illicit finance rules, our protections of a one-to-one dollar banking. None of that exists today. Because of the work of this legislation, we actually have a regulatory framework that can protect consumers in the future. And I just want to thank Senator Scott and Senator Hagerty for their extremely honest and thoughtful approach in working on bipartisan legislation, which I'm very proud of the effort we have made. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that I be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes, followed by Senator Scott of South Carolina for up to 5 minutes prior to the scheduled roll
Without
call.
objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in support of my legislation, the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Act, otherwise known as the Genius Act. I'd like to thank Senator Gillibrand for her kind comments and for her hard work in this, Senator Scott, who so ably chaired our committee. And I'm very pleased to say that we're at a point now where America can actually see a comprehensive and clear regulatory framework come to bear for payment stablecoins. For too long, the lack of any such framework has forced digital asset innovation beyond our borders here in America and into foreign countries. It's jeopardized our nation's financial leadership, and frankly, as Senator Gillibrand said, it's put American consumers at risk. Meanwhile, our slow and outdated payment rails, frankly, rails that were developed back in the 1970s and 1980s, have failed to keep pace with many other overseas jurisdictions. To modernize our payment system and to restore our nation's competitive edge, we must act now. That's why I've introduced the Genius Act. This legislation takes a common sense, bipartisan approach to regulating stablecoins. Allow me to concisely explain what the Genius Act does. It clearly defines a payment stablecoin as a digital asset pegged to a fixed value backed by U.S. Treasuries and used for transactions. It describes clear procedures for institutions to issue stablecoins. It establishes a regulatory regime that balances the responsibilities of both federal and state authorities. It implements standards that ensure safety, stability, and consumer protection. And it provides rigorous safeguards to deter illicit activity, to increase transparency, and to aid the vital work of law enforcement. These provisions are pragmatic and forward-looking. They both protect consumers and promote innovation. And crucially, they represent bipartisan agreement, reflecting that both Democrats and Republicans recognize the vast potential of this emerging technology. The benefits of stablecoin innovation are immense. By reducing friction in the payment process, they can improve the speed and the efficiency of cross-border transactions. Faster and cheaper transactions can unlock much-needed working capital for American businesses and provide individuals with more effective tools for making international payments. Moving aspects of our payment system to the blockchain has been shown to increase efficiencies in capital markets. Innovators are constantly uncovering transformative use cases, and the rapid pace of innovation will only increase with regulatory clarity. Stablecoins also advance a vital national interest by driving demand for U.S. Treasuries. A recent report forecasts that with a well-crafted U.S. regulatory framework, stablecoin issuers could become one of the top holders of U.S. Treasuries by the end of this decade. Frankly, it could happen even sooner. This would strengthen our physical position and cement the dollar status as the world's reserve currency. If we fail to act now, not only will these benefits slip away, we'll also fall behind in global competitiveness. Without a regulatory framework, stablecoin innovation will proliferate overseas and not in America. And if we fail to act, Americans using this new technology will be left with no choice but to rely on foreign stablecoins that lack vital consumer protections. And critically, inaction would surrender our leadership to the Chinese Communist Party, a party that aggressively advances its own digital currency. We can avoid this outcome, but only if we all unite behind this legislation. In the spirit of patriotic cooperation, I want to thank Senator Scott, Senator Lummis, Senator Gillibrand, and Senator also Brooks, who co-sponsored an earlier iteration of this bill and who have worked hard with me every step of the way to make this a strong bipartisan effort. And I also extend gratitude to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who supported this legislation in the Banking Committee and contributed to the consensus product that we now see before the United States Senate. We have an opportunity to cement America's financial dominance for decades to come and demonstrate that this body can come together and pass legislation that benefits our country and its citizens. I urge all my colleagues to join me in advancing the Genius Act. And I urge those watching from afar to view this critical vote for what it is: a statement of support for a vital, innovative technology and a demonstration of our willingness as a body here in the United States Senate to work for America. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the Genius Act. And today, Mr. President, is a good day to watch a bipartisan coalition do what we were sent here to do: work on behalf of the American people. Today, the United States can take a bold and historic step forward, not just for financial innovation, but also for American leadership, consumer protection, and economic opportunity. With the Bipartisan Genius Act, we can do more than just pass a bill. We can deliver results for the American people. We can bring clarity for a sector that's been clouded by uncertainty, and we can make it known. The United States will lead, not follow, in the digital asset revolution. When I became chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, I promised to prioritize innovation, accountability, and smart regulation in the evolving digital economy. And we have the opportunity to deliver on that promise. The Genius Act will be the most significant digital assets legislation ever to pass the U.S. Senate. It's the product of months of bipartisan work. And I also want to thank the bill's sponsor, Bill Hagerty, who went out of his way to make this legislation a bipartisan success by partnering with Senator also Brooks, working with Senator Gillibrand, along with our colleagues on this side of the aisle, Senator Lummis and myself. I am incredibly proud to see the hard work Senator Hagerty pay off not for him, but for the American people. That's what makes this process such a special one. It's what makes the United States Senate the most deliberative body in the world today. This is a victory for working families, small businesses, and everyday Americans who deserve faster, cheaper, and safer access to financial services. It's a win for innovation because this framework will give entrepreneurs the confidence to build here in the United States of America and not abroad. And it's a win for national security because the Genius Act brings stablecoin issuers under strict anti-money laundering standards, cracking down on bad actors at home and abroad. Let me be clear. This did not happen by accident. It happened because we led. To those who said Washington could not act, to those who doubted bipartisanship, let's prove them wrong. Let's show that principled leadership, conservative values, and common sense can still move this country forward together. And I would not be complete in my comments if I did not stop and thank the Senate banking staff for their hard work and their dedication. It would be incomplete if I did not stop and thank Senator Hagerty's staff for their hard work, countless hours, and Senator Gillibrand's staff for her dedication and their dedication to this issue, and certainly Senator Lummis and her staff who spent countless hours making a good product better. Let's finish the job and get this bill to President Trump's desk for a signature. Thank you. I yield back.